Hey, Canyon, how are you?
Hey, Councilmember Gray, it's good to see you.
You
I
too. How you doing?
apologize for the delay to everybody. I
Oh,
appreciate you.
come on, man. We're all in this together.
Yeah, I had a little delay. I'm actually um, just arriving at this location. So let me go ahead and get started. Um, I heard that staff already started the recording. So if you give me a countdown, staff, I'm ready to go when you all are.
We can begin in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Good morning. I'm Kenyon McDuffie, council member for Ward 5 and chair of the council's Committee on Business and Economic Development. Today's Thursday, June 23rd, 2022. We're convening this additional meeting of the committee virtually via Zoom. We're also streaming live on YouTube. The time is 11:15 a.m. and I'm calling to order this session. For the record, I'd like to note that we have a quorum which consists of myself, Ward 2 Councilmember Brooke Pinto, Ward 3 Councilmember Mary Che, Ward 6 Councilmember Charles Allen, and Ward 7 Councilmember Vince Gray. Today, the committee will consider and vote on proposed resolution 24-679, the Metropolitan Police Department reimbursable detail subsidy program hours of eligibility approval resolution of 2022. Proposed resolution 24-754, the Chief Financial Officer of the District of Columbia, Glenn Lee, confirmation resolution of 2022. Proposed resolution 24-739, the Lee Montessori Public Charter School Revenue Bonds Project Approval Resolution of 2022, and Bill 24-237, the Clean Hands Equity Amendment Act of 2022. Proposed resolution 24-679, the Metropolitan Police Department reimbursable detailed subsidy program hours of eligibility approval resolution of 2022 was introduced by Chairman Mendelson on April 4th, 2022 at the request of the mayor and referred to the committee on April 5th, 2022. The measure is subject to a 90-day active council review period. The proposed resolution would approve proposed rules to amend Section 718 of Title 23 of the District of Columbia Municipal Regulations. The proposed rulemaking would modify the Metropolitan Police Department reimbursable detailed subsidy program by restoring hours of eligibility for obtaining reimbursement for audio program services to pre-pandemic hours, which are 11:30 p.m. to 5 a.m. Sunday through Saturday. The proposed rulemaking would also add DC Main Street to the list of eligible entities for participation in the program. These rules were adopted by the Alcoholic Beverage Control Board on June 16, 2021 on an emergency basis by a unanimous vote. The proposed resolution, if not approved, will be deemed disapproved on July 5th of this year. Is there any discussion on this measure? Hearing none, I move the draft committee report in print with leave for staff to make technical, editorial, and conforming changes. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it unanimously and the measure is approved. Proposed resolution 24-754, the Chief Financial Officer of the District of Columbia, Glenn M. Lee, confirmation resolution of 2022 was introduced by Chairman Mendelson on May 23rd, 2022 at the request of the mayor. The proposed resolution was then referred to the committee on June 7th, 2022. The committee subsequently held a public hearing on June 16th, 2022. If approved, the proposed resolution will confirm the appointment of Glenn M. Lee as Chief Financial Officer of the District of Columbia, succeeding Dr. Fitzroy Lee for a term ending on June 30th, 2027. Mr. Lee currently serves as a finance director for the city of Seattle. There, he manages Seattle's financial processes and tax administration functions, along with the nation's first multi-jurisdictional municipal corporate tax filing system. Prior to his current position, Mr. Lee serves as an assistant finance director for the city of Seattle for 11 years, where he focused on revenue forecasting and worked to increase clarity and transparency of the city of Seattle's annual budget process. Mr. Lee began his career as a fiscal and policy analyst in the California State Legislative Analyst's Office. He also holds a Bachelor of Science degree from the University of California, Berkeley in agriculture and resource economics. Is there any discussion? Councilmember Pinto.
Thank you very much, Chairman McDuffie. I look forward to supporting Mr. Lee's nomination today. I've been impressed by him through this process, and I'm hopeful that he has a good grasp on the importance of maintaining the independence of the OCFO's office as we manage the office in a way that is fair and also considers the long-term needs and strategy of having a balanced financial system in the district. So looking forward to supporting him today for those reasons. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Pinto. We're gonna go Councilmember Allen and Councilmember Gray. Councilmember Allen? Yes.
Thanks.
Oh, there you
Sorry,
go.
my camera keeps turning off. Sorry about that.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. McDuffie. I appreciate hearing from Mr. Lee when we met to discuss his background, hear about his experience and his vision for leading the OCFO, which obviously is a vitally important institution in the district. I want to acknowledge the importance of this process in selecting a new CFO, because it honestly does give the district a chance to think about our long-term financial growth and viability. As you, Mr. Chairman, pointed out during, and sorry, my camera just keeps turning off, but I'll just keep turning it back on. As you pointed out, Mr. Chairman, during the previous confirmation proceeding, vision and leadership are vital qualities necessary to lead the CFO's office. And I want to echo the testimony that we heard from the DC Auditor, Kathy Patterson, and stress the need for independence and integrity to undergird the work of the CFO's office, which has come into question the last several years on a variety of issues. We must see the CFO return to be that independent, neutral position in the district government and ensure they're accountable to both the legislative and executive branch, as well as to the people of the district who we all serve. As co-chair of the Special Committee on Pandemic Recovery, I'm very concerned about what comes next for the district. The pandemic presented us tremendous challenges, like many other jurisdictions across the country, as will our economic recovery. However, because of the balanced management of our finances, we kept our fiscal house in order and we sustained DC's pre-pandemic growth. This budgetary stability is a testament to the hard work of the staff at OCFO, as well as the senior leadership. However, DC is going to face an uncertain future. Remote work is likely to become the new norm, leaving office spaces vacant. Commercial value property has dropped in some areas. We know that jobs and commuting trends are already impacting how and we know that national economic pressures are putting a strain on low and middle class residents, unfortunately, making life more expensive and driving up costs. So I look forward to working with Mr. Lee. I'm going to support him in this nomination. Look forward to working with him in the months and years to come as we build a more equitable and resilient district that works for all residents and ensures we continue our strong fiscal recovery despite current national and regional economic conditions. So thank you, Mr. McDuffie, for your thoughtful work on this nomination and for moving it forward today.
And thank you, Councilmember Allen. Next is Councilmember Vincent Gray.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I just have a quick question. Can you tell me what Fitzroy Lee, I guess, was the acting during the transition period? And I'm just wondering, do you know what will become of him, Mr. Chairman, as we move forward with his appointment?
Well, I mean, Fitzroy would still retain his employment. I haven't had any indication, Mr. Gray, that he intends to leave the office. I think what we heard at the hearing from people who testified was really a complimentary of his service, both at an interim basis, but also, his tenure in the office, which is,
Right,
as you know, very long term, having dedicated most of his professional career to the District of Columbia within the Office of the Chief Financial Officer. So it's my hope, and I think the hope of a lot of others, both those who testified and I imagine others who have not, that Dr. Fitzroy Lee would remain within the Office of the Chief Financial Officer to continue to support the work of that office.
well, I appreciate that, Mr. Chairman. Fitzroy Lee has really served with distinction in the Office of the Chief Financial Officer, and that I hope that he will have the opportunity to continue to work in this office, given the service that he has provided historically.
I would agree with that.
Recording in progress.
Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, I move the draft committee report and print with leave for staff to make technical, editorial, and conforming changes. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? The ayes have it unanimously, and the measure is approved. The next measure is proposed resolution 24-739, the Lee Montessori Public Charter School Revenue Bonds Project Approval Resolution of 2022, which was introduced on April 27, 2022 by Chairman Mendelson at the request of the mayor and referred to the committee on May 3rd, 2022. The committee held a public hearing on a similar measure on February 22nd, 2022. The proposed resolution will allow the district to issue up to $30 million in taxes and bonds, notes, and other obligations to help Lee Montessori Public Charter School finance the cost to acquire and expand an elementary school at 2345 R Street Southeast and renovate, build out, and equip additional classrooms and instructional spaces at its facility located at 3025 4th Street Northeast. The school's proposed use of the revenue bonds proceeds complies with Section 490 of the District of Columbia Home Rule Act. Is there any discussion on this measure? Hearing none, I move the draft committee report in print with leave for staff to make technical, editorial, and conforming changes. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it unanimously. The measure is approved. The final measure before the committee this morning is Bill 24-237, the Clean Hands Certification Equity Amendment Act 2022, which I introduced on May 3rd, 2021. The bill was referred to this committee on May 4th, 2022, and the public hearing was held on April 18th, 2022. If approved, the committee print would amend Title 47 and the definition for the type of licenses and permits that require clean hand certification to exclude driver's licenses beginning in the fiscal year 2024. Under the current law, an individual who owes the district more than $100 in certain types of debt, including traffic fines and fees, cannot obtain or renew their driver's license. This requirement disproportionately burdens low-income and minority communities who are more susceptible to bias in traffic enforcement and therefore more likely to be issued traffic fines and fees, and are also more likely, according to reports, to be unable to pay those fines and fees. This legislation would address the inequity created by this policy and allow individuals to obtain or renew a driver's license. The council placed funding for this measure in the FY23 budget. To be clear, this bill does not forgive debt, does not forgive moving violations, and it does not prevent a driver from accumulating points when their license or facing associated consequences for moving violations, particularly reckless driving, such as the imposition of higher insurance rates or other things. Under current law, DMV cannot suspend a driver's license for unpaid debt. Therefore, this measure would only come into play when that driver needs to renew their driver's license. I know a lot has been mentioned by the council, rightly, about the connection between clean hands and maybe questions about broader implications. I want to raise a couple of things around implications on public safety and safe driving. To be clear, there's no evidence to suggest that clean hands promotes public safety generally or driving safely specifically. When the council originally passed the Clean Hands Law in 1996, its purpose was much narrower. It was to deter littering, illegal dumping, and delinquent tax filings by withholding licenses and permits from people who commit those offenses and fail to pay their fines. In 2021, when the district was working to end the reign of the Financial Control Board, the council added moving and parking infractions to the list of clean hands triggering violations as a way to generate additional revenue for the city. Today, only 2 of the 50 states in the country deny driver's licenses to people who owe debt to the government. Moreover, according to reports, approximately 80% of the traffic debt owed to DC is held by non-DC residents who are not subject to the district's clean hands laws. These out-of-state drivers can renew their licenses within their home states without paying the DC parking and moving ticket debts. At the public hearing on this measure in April, the committee heard really strong and compelling personal testimonies from a series of witnesses who've been adversely impacted by the Clean Hands Law. People like 70-year-old Ward 8 resident Carolina Mitchell, who accumulated $660 in parking tickets while she was homeless and slept in her car, all because her tags were expired. None of her tickets resulted from a moving violation. She testified of the experiences that she had, including depression because of the experience and the inability to pay that outstanding debt. Still to this day, she can't drive to the grocery store, church, or visit relatives who live out of town. We also learned the story of Ward 7 resident Evelyn Parham, who provides full-time care for her elderly mother. In December 2016, she drove over a pothole on the Benning Road Bridge, which seriously damaged her car and rendered it inoperable. That winter, her car sat directly outside of her house and accumulated tickets after her car registration and inspection expired. She couldn't afford to pay or to have her car repaired, and she certainly couldn't afford to pay the massive cost of a newer license. The record really includes similar compelling cases, including people like Sally Boyd, a University of District of Columbia biology student, a single parent of 4 children, as well as that of Norris Harvey, a native Washingtonian and cancer survivor whose driver's license expired in 2012, and he couldn't renew it because of delinquent parking tickets. Rather than continue to penalize poverty and reinforcing the stark Black, white, racial wealth gap in our city, the council, through this measure, could help to decouple the Clean Hands Law from the issuance and renewal of driver's licenses. I think we need to lead with compassion here and instead focus our efforts on working with our neighboring jurisdictions to identify ways to ensure residents outside of DC who owe 80% of the district's traffic and parking debt respect our communities by driving safely on our streets and paying their outstanding debts. Is there any discussion on this matter? We'll go to Mary Che, and then we'll follow it up with Councilmember Charles Allen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I completely understand and sympathize with the purpose behind this measure, particularly with respect to people who have no means of paying their tickets and then can't renew their license, and with all the consequences that flow from that, not being able to, as you said, in one case, travel to church, or people who have children not be able to pick them up, not be able to go to their job via a car, that sort of thing. And it was this concern that, prompted the council to stop suspending licenses when tickets weren't paid. But I think my concerns relate primarily to the rather blunt and overbroad way that this particular bill proceeds. If we talk about, well, what's left to enforce the law, you can send the matter to a collection agency, and there may be some other consequences. But the fact of the matter is, this approach protects even people who can pay. They just don't want to. They're not paying. And I think there ought to be some sort of means test here, or some other way that this could be crafted, because what does this signal really? It signals that you can accrue these fines, and even if you can pay, you don't have to, because if you have to go and renew your license, and by the way, licenses, you don't know where a particular person is, but licenses are renewed, every 7 or 10 years? And during that period, a person could make a reasonable effort to pay the fines that they owe. And with respect to the signal, there are people who are accruing fines, but not points, because they're violating the law and being caught by automatic traffic enforcement cameras. So they could be really horrible drivers. They could run red lights, they could speed, they could do all of these things. And aren't those exactly the people whose licenses we don't want to renew? I'm very concerned about this. Again, I understand the underlying purpose, but it's not well crafted. It's over-inclusive, and it sends a rather bad signal to drivers about when they will be held to account. Thank you.
Go next to Councilmember Charles Allen.
Thank you, Mr. McDuffie. I appreciate you and your staff for this bill that clearly would address racial inequities in our system of fines and fees. I have seen the evidence, and we all certainly know, as you also outlined for us, Black residents and low-income residents are more likely to be burdened by outstanding tickets and civil fines of all types. And for those reasons, I will be supporting this legislation today. However, I am concerned that we aren't making a distinction between, on the one hand, someone who got a parking ticket just over the limit and got an automated ticket from a camera, and then was hit with late fees, accumulating burdens, as well outlined, because they couldn't pay. versus on the other hand, someone with thousands of dollars of unpaid speeding tickets for dangerous driving on neighborhood streets. I think we've all seen repeated cases where drivers who are involved in crashes that lead to death or serious injury also had many unpaid speeding tickets. And these are rarely for what our DC code defines as reckless driving, which is 30 miles per hour over the speed limit. Again, it's not considered reckless under our code unless it's 30 miles per hour over the speed limit. So that means someone going 49 miles per hour on a residential street just gets the ticket, the same as someone going 25 in a 20. And many of these speeding tickets are automated tickets, which isn't even triggered until someone's going 11 miles per hour over the speed limit. And I think there has to be some consequence for repeated driving at dangerous speeds on residential streets. Of course, the only real fix is to redesign our infrastructure so that drivers are not encouraged to operate at such high speeds. But I think DDOT is moving unbearably slow on that front. To that point, Mr. McDuffie, you and I worked together to take a really dramatic step to force DDOT to move faster to improve the dangerous conditions for drivers and pedestrians and cyclists on Florida Avenue, for example. We limited DDOT's ability to reprogram capital dollars. In response, DDOT finally made temporary changes that neighbors have been asking for years. We let that temporary legislation expire more than 2 years ago because DDOT assured the council the permanent project was funded and would be underway soon, but that contract just went out. Work has not started and the temporary changes sit destroyed in many places. I think we've got to figure out how we have a system of fines and fees that's more equitable. But I do think it's important to balance that with our roadway safety. After all, road deaths are more highly concentrated on the eastern end of our city, where the majority of residents are Black. I'm going to support this bill today, but I hope that between now and first reading, we can work together to try to draw a distinction for repeated and dangerous driving on DC roadways that honors the very important goals of this bill, but also recognizes the consequence of dangerous speeds and driving on our neighborhood streets. And I hope, Mr. McDuffie, that's something we can work on between now and first reading.
Any further discussion? I'll provide a comment, but I want to give everybody an opportunity to first speak. So I want to go to Ward 2, Councilman Brooklyn.
Thank you very much, Chairman McDuffie, for your work on this important bill. And thank you, Councilmember Allen, for raising the importance of having penalties and deterrents for reckless driving and unacceptable behavior on our roadways, that it continues to be extremely unsafe and that we need ticketing for, not just for DC residents, but reciprocity for other states' drivers who endanger our road users in DC. It is remarkable how far-reaching the effects can be when an outstanding ticket is placed on a resident, particularly for non-moving violations. And Chairman McDuffie listed a couple of the examples, but we need to position our residents in a place that they can recover and seek gainful employment and move on with their lives from these tickets. And so I am proud to support this bill today. I want to thank the dozens of community organizations who have worked on this bill, have advocated for these changes for years, and thank Chairman McDuffie for your leadership here and looking forward to supporting this bill today. Thank you.
And thank you, Councilman Prince. I want to thank each of my colleagues for the really important comments. I know how much we all care about traffic safety, and I think in particular, Councilman Che and Allen have spent a lot of their time at the council really enhancing our laws to ensure that our roads are safer for everyone who uses them. And so I appreciate that. I will say I do think when it comes to what this bill is seeking to accomplish, we do, and we crafted it in recognition that there are also other ways to enforce safety on our roads throughout the District of Columbia. I think about the collections process. I think about towing. I think about booting. I think about the beholding of registrations for people who owe money to the District of Columbia. The fact that folks who have greater wealth and actually are seeking to get tax returns from the District of Columbia, there's a process to withhold your refund if you owe money to the city. And so I think there are a number of ways or tools in the toolkit. But I will say that I'm certainly open to working with my colleagues if we find that there's language to enhance what we're seeking to accomplish here, as I articulated and you all articulated, to really not penalize poverty in the District of Columbia through the withholding of driver's licenses and renewals. And so I'm certainly open to working with you all between now and first reading, to the extent you have suggestions to enhance the bill. So thank you for that. Is there any further discussion? Councilmember Che?
Yes, thank you. And I'm glad that you're willing to, look at this. I'm willing to send it on to the full council. But I do hope in the meanwhile, we can look at some adjustments or qualifications so that the bill is made more appropriate and not, as I said before, over-inclusive. So I thank you for that. And with that understanding, I'm willing to send it on to the full council, but I do hope we can take some steps to tighten this up. Thanks.
I mean, I've said it more than once. So we're open to it. You send something over to committee, we'll look at it and we'll work with you all. We think it's reasonable and it's going to actually, continue to fulfill what I think the goal is here. I think we don't disagree, and I think the racial equity impact assessment is an important read for those who haven't had a chance to look at it. But if there are ways to enhance it, then certainly we're willing to work with you all on it. So again, if there are any further discussion? Hearing none, I move the draft committee report in print with leave staff to make technical, editorial, and performance changes. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? The ayes have it unanimously and the measure is approved. There's no more further business before the committee. This now, this time like 11:41 a.m. Thank you for your time and this meeting is adjourned. Thank you all.